Hello, my name is Michael O'Keefe, aka the Movie Mystic. If you enjoy these film reviews, then please press the like button, subscribe, hit the bell, and stay in the know. Subscribing to this channel means you get to watch the coolest new film industry interviews, hear some groovy film reviews, and get some live streams too. Number 28. Léa Seydoux is such a cool actress. I loved her in the French movie France, and of course David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future. So there was a decent amount of personal anticipation for her film, The Beast. Sadly, though, the movie felt uneven. It is a dramatic, cerebral science fiction film that borrows a concept that seems like The Matrix, but with various quote-unquote tributes to David Lynch. I felt that the filmmakers felt that because they were from France, they could take away with this overly referential, pretentious filmmaking. There was a storyline late in the movie that was compelling. That storyline dealt with an incel stalking our lovely protagonist. It has some edge when it went into the world of contemporary sexual violence. This film badly needed some edge. A lot of the vortexes entered are interesting and well done, yet stiff, and they lose the viewer's engagement as the scenes develop. But many of these scenes are shot well. There's even a reference to Dario Argento's lesser appreciated film Inferno, which was cool to see. But there is a visual as well as thematic references to David Lynch's Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and To a Peaceful Return. That is a little too much for me. There are things to like here, but I internally groaned throughout. Better luck next time, guys. Number 27. Seagrass is a miserable movie. It looks at a couple's intervention retreat in the country where things go from bad to very bad in the Canadian feel-bad movie of the year. You may want the discovery of bad to worse and be fine with this sort of thing, or you may not. Let's just start by identifying it for what it is. Then you as a viewer can make your decision to watch it or not. The couple brings their kids who have a bad time, and the couple meets another couple who seems to be in a much better place than them, reinforcing how insurmountable resolution in their relationship is. Perhaps the thorniest character we get is Steve, the husband, who really is a charmless man and is offended by the idea of explaining his emotional states, which is not the attitude you want to have for this sort of trip. Steve makes hard things impossible, and I truly disliked his character. All the actors are good here and presents a sense of realism quite well. There's zero escapism here, so if you're ready for good acting, no less, and nothing more, then you should likely find what you're looking for with Seagrass. Number 26. Smugglers is a fun new movie from South Korea set in the 1970s, and it happens to have the tone of an action movie from the 70s. It's some lighthearted fun that fans of Asian cinema will most likely appreciate. The film is about aquatic robbers. It's got such a James Bond feeling, but we follow a group of ladies, let's call them a Bond girl gang, who go from getting messed with to doing messing with. Even when cold-hearted revenge is dished out on a man, here it still feels like fun given the lighthearted nature of this movie. The movie is sort of a walk in the park. It goes through the motions and delivers a vibe without the stakes ever feeling too high or there being a big dramatic thrust that can easily be perceived as a cinematic weakness. I wouldn't say it makes the film necessarily weak or strong. It's just what it is. So make sure if you do watch it to make it a vibe setting. Maybe watch this before you go out to a bar, not for transcendentally meditative cinematic purposes. So I still don't love this movie, but I think it was a fun watch. Its lack of seriousness isn't really a problem, more just not my cup of tea. But it does have quite a fun resolution, so if you put it on, stick with it till the end. Number 25. Bloom is a short film that expresses the loss of a lover. It consists of a lot of pacing around in an apartment, wondering what the future will hold, but basically being quite upset about things. The bonsai tree is a visual focal point of the film, as well as a metaphorical one. We can't but notice and wonder if things will truly bloom into a better day. This short is meditative and dark. The classy score and abstractions make this a good 10-minute investment to check out. Number 24. Jay Vita might be from Finland, but this is a movie that will make sense for those of us who are North American based, and it might be a revelation for some of us as well. It looks at indigenous assimilation into Finnish society. An older woman connects to her past, and her reconnecting to it is a large part of things as well. It is like a less blunt version of the Canadian movie Indian Horse. But this movie and Indian Horse look at someone who is raised with indigenous customs and then thrust into a modern white one. Indian Horse has more intensity. Jay Vita is emotional but less intense. I personally prefer the approach Jay Vita takes, as it allows for the ideas to sink in instead of being pummeled into us, the viewers. There's plenty of intensity, but a lot of the ease of this movie comes with the black and white photography. Nowadays, that is always like a big artistic decision to make between that and the chronological structure of this movie. We get a lot of intense ideas drawn out with some ease, which is nice. The acting, writing, and technical decisions are interesting, and it was interesting, while also depressing, to know this untold story of Finland, which has been hidden quite well all along. Number 23. Kill is the second Indian movie to play in the Midnight Madness category at the Toronto International Film Festival. It was apparently initially longer, but 20 minutes or so were cut out to keep it moving. It's a cool setup. A guy's girlfriend is being put in an arranged marriage, and he must get on the train to stop it while simultaneously defending everyone from a group of robbers who have happened to hop on. I like the setup and the tight spaces. Like in last year's Midnight Madness movie, Project Wolf Hunting, add to a degree of immensely uncomfortable claustrophobia, which cinematically is like scary action. It's not horror per se, certainly adjacent though, and has a cool dimension to all the punches, kicks, and stabs that we get here. But I also think I'm not a big fan of this type of cinema. I like more open backgrounds to fill the shots with interesting things instead of these very tight kinetic moments. Things a little bit more open seem to work for my action movie preferences. There are developments in the story that are unexpected. The stake gets reshifted, and there are changes in the projected storyline. They're not predictable, and for that, I commend the filmmakers. The setup and development are quite interesting, and some of the sustained things throughout that's starting to wear out my patience overall, though. Very cool movie, and something fun and different to check out for action movie fans. Number 22. Having seen Carolina Markowitz's movie Charcoal last year, I was more than happy to agree to watch her latest movie Toll, as well as another interview to pick up where we left off. We had, I thought, a fun interview last year, and she even stayed around the corner from a friend of mine during TIFF. He only had nice things to say about her. Charcoal was quite harrowing to the point of being horror adjacent, but this is not the case with her new movie Toll. Yet both movies could be done in a double bill for an interesting comparative analysis. This one looks at the working class and drugs, but it's not quite as hard-hitting. It also looks at LGBTQ plus issues, so there's enough difference to say it is not a repeat of Charcoal. I actually like that both films are from the same mold, and with the new Brazilian government, we'll hopefully get several more films from Carolina made in the same vein. I like Carolina's view of working people in her movies, as well as the positioning of them against the systems that keep them poor. Toll is less of a bludgeoning and more of a discourse on these issues as well. Number 21. Humanist vampire-seeking, consenting, suicidal person reminds me of two movies. The Jim Jarmusch film Only Lovers Left Alive and another Canadian movie seen during TIFF 2021 called Kicking Blood. These films are certainly modern or hipster, quote-unquote, additions to the vampire genre. This movie, though, is set in Montreal, so the French language elevates the sense of coolness, a unique love story of sorts. We focus on a maladjusted elderly vampire who happens to look like a 20-something-year-old woman trying to get blood from someone without killing them. They must surrender themselves. One young man who's willing to martyr himself, given his life to a higher purpose, seems like a political act, but here it is a romantic one. The movie is inherently funny like that, but in a deadpan manner. The lives are to be found, but they aren't bludgeoned onto you. The movie may be the best, quote-unquote, hipster vampire movie to date. The script, visuals, and acting are smartly downplayed to let the inherent value of the story shine. If you're looking for a sophisticated romp, this should certainly work for you, not only in October, but any day of the year. Number 20. Boy Kills World might not have rocked my world, but I think it would have if I was 25 years or so younger. I see this as possibly even a great movie for male prepubescence. It's colorful, loud, and obnoxious. It's got nice big name candy. It's got violence. It's got color, imagination, and good fast pacing to get all the 12-year-old boys jumping up and down and then passing out at 10 p.m. So keep that in mind. I thought this movie was going to be terrible, but while watching it, I came to the realization I'm on the target audience, and it does a good job of what it's trying to be, where it's trying to go. Don't expect the insight of Akira Kurosawa or the brutality of Ruggiero Deodato. It's a genre movie for those nearly in high school, or maybe in high school, like grade 9, no later than 10, though. I like the action within its context. I like the fast pace. I like seeing celebrities. And I like this movie. While I'm not likely going to ever watch it again, that's okay too. We can't get mad at something for not being something we wanted to be as film critics. We must judge it for what it's trying to accomplish. I don't try to watch movies I will 100% not like. I try to focus on movies with a simpatico spirit. Number 19, the documentary Flipside will flip you on your head in a backflip downwards. It is not perfect by any means. Yeah, it is quite inspired. If you're looking for a documentary perhaps with a manifesto of its own, here's something. It follows Christopher Wiltsh's chronicles of being a rebellious member of Generation X, growing up, working corporate, filming the experience, making it in the independent documentary world, and then the slip-up. He seems to be a hardworking guy who lost some momentum, so he decides to go back to his roots at the record store where he had his first job as a teenager to at first make a documentary about the store. It splitters off into subplots featuring unfinished documentaries, the record store being like a metaphor for you scenes coming in and out, all seemingly disposable but granted high value, reflecting the logic of a collector/hoarder. The movie diverges a little too much for my liking. Having footage from unfinished products comes in so frequently, though whatever the main plot was supposed to be loses some momentum, although it is an interesting technique at first. The problem with its originality is that it loses coherence, but its originality is a strength as well, as are the high volume cuts. They're a little too much to take after a while, but they are the stamp of an artist. Number 18. I will be perfectly honest. I was not totally sure what to expect with the Orlando My Political Biography. It was directed by someone with a PhD, and the write-up on the TIFF website only baffled me with its references. I knew that this trip fest would have to be experienced to have an opinion on good, bad, or ugly. So in I went, forgetting the site write-up, forgetting what the programmers were saying, forgetting some doubts. That is how I went in. The movie is like an expressive documentary, defined and didactic categorization. Real transitioning people talk about their identities as a Virginia Woolf character apparently did in a book. I don't feel like that exposition is even totally necessary to understand here. It is just the vortex we go into to add a literary dimension in this movie/documentary for people to have something else to focus on while talking about their perspective. It was a very interesting setup and quite unique, but it does lose some steam at the halfway mark. So I would say this is a very good project, not a great cinematic experience. It is looking at trans identity, but it's also European, so perhaps that old world feeling will seep into you. You almost forget the subject matter, even if it is the only thing on the screen now. Number 17. Last year, I enjoyed The Umbrella Men and thought maybe a sequel would be a cool idea for this jazzy comedic gangster movie. To my surprise, within the year that happened. Perhaps the trilogy will wrap up next year. The movie has the same tone because it is quote-unquote jazzy that makes it unpredictably different. Instead of a caper, we get a prison escape movie here. If you like the first one, you should like the second one. It's still difficult to say which one is better, but a better question is, will you enjoy it? Which is a probable yes. South African cinema has been invested in properly to get some fun things. South African movies from the 90s and 2000s were a little bit more serious, but also stuffy. Nowadays, they have genre movies that are fun, but express the same political turmoil. The tone is lighthearted for a gangster movie, which might throw you off with these movies. It's more an artistic direction, though, than condoning any antisocial behavior. I didn't know what to expect before watching this movie, but I was satisfied with the experience. There is fun dialogue, fun music, and a continuation of a storyline that is worth getting into. Number 16. The movie Jinpa is simply incredible. So with respect to its director, Apima Sidin, who died this year, it was integral for me to see his final movie, Snow Leopard, shot in Tibet, which he has made a place of cinematic legend for me. When it comes to creating a mystical environment for a film, I cannot think of a better place than Tibet. Bhutan is a close second, though. Snow Leopard is not quite as accomplished as Jinpa, but is still quite good. Combines the mystical symbolism that made Jinpa so miraculous with more of an earthbound concern for habitat preservation. A group of monks who are also farmers are confronted to deal with this, which makes it great for the audience. We learn with them. Then have an antagonist which we want to overcome. So justice is withheld. A snow leopard kills 9 of the monks' rams, which will cost them a lot. But the snow leopard is an endangered animal. They obviously have to let it go and then worry about partial compensation from the state later. But one of the monks is quite headstrong, and he has to be wrestled with symbolically and literally at once. If you had not seen Jinpa, this might be a great novelty for you, but if you have seen Jinpa, it expands Pema's folklore in cinema to a nice degree. Rest in peace to him, and certainly check out Snow Leopard for quality mystical cinema. Number 15. Coming from deep down south, Argentina to be precise, is the malevolent film called When Evil Lurks, a very interesting possession movie that is quite expressive, void of logic, creating an interesting cinematic texture for its viewers. The film shows a possessed man unleashing the foulness stuck within him on his city. People are no longer themselves once they are contaminated. They are no longer family members here. In the write-up on the TIFF website, it is accurately compared to City of the Living Dead. That movie is void of a logical plot. It creates a cinematic dream space where an evil zombie priest infects everyone. It's like a zombie, but more surreal and spiritually penetrating. There is a deeper lodging into the mind blending a possession movie with the movie. And there's also a fair amount of violence involving children. That might be a red flag for you. But there are a lot of logical decisions that would be a red flag before that. I like those artistic decisions, but I think it does not always get to have its ambition fully realized through in a practical sense. I also found that there is too much yelling from the actors, and there's an obnoxiousness in some performances that make things less fun in an otherwise fascinating genre film. Number 14, the concept of the plot of Working Class Goes to Hell is a hysterical one, and it deserves a lot of recognition for its novelty and maybe enough of a reason to get through the whole movie. The movie is set in Serbia, and some of us in the audience will know that it is former Yugoslavia, a communist nation that fell apart into sort of a provincial nation states. It is one of the most politically charged places on earth, so the idea that a group of workers being screwed over would go so far as to make a pact with the devil is hysterical on its face. Playing with our ideas and emotions of a region with satanic dabblings makes for a good anecdote. The movie has that gritty feeling throughout. It is undeniably of its country, with all the poor living conditions, talk of the devils, and abundant alcohol consumption throughout the whole project. It's dirty. It does sag a bit in the middle, while interestingly gross throughout. It's the setup and resolution that are the more interesting parts of this film. But part of the gritty thumbing of the nose of what is expected in a movie's story is charming too. I don't know what you think about Yugoslavia, but if you are even a little bit engaged with it, you should enjoy this while seeing it as a bit of a hot mess. But I can also see many people not being into this. Number 13, I enjoyed the movie Barbie, but a much more appropriate movie to pair with Oppenheimer is Death of a Whistleblower from Africa. Yes, it won't make Barbie money, but some things about it are very interesting. Oppenheimer and Death of a Whistleblower are both very stressful experiences. There is palpable yet justified paranoia, given the dire consequences for humanity in both films, and intensity makes things very captivating. Death of a Whistleblower is not a biopic, though, so it is allowed to get wilder with this implication, while realistically, Oppenheimer's stakes are high, showing that truth is stranger than fiction. The fact is, the movie is fun, but it is serious. It tends to look at a government cover-up that leads to bad people doing war crimes of their own people in the name of profit. The fact that it is set in South Africa makes the implication more diabolical. Even the country that had Nelson Mandela as its head of state must deal with this feeling of madness on the plantation. Between the vibe, the acting, and the script, this is my kind of movie. So if you vibe with me, then check this one out. Number 12, the South Korean horror movie Sleep, which played in the coveted Midnight Madness category at TIFF, is a great expression of dread, not necessarily, in my opinion, an elaborate film filled with a layered thematic. That is cool. That it is especially chilling in a subdued manner. Even when this movie is frightening, it still feels somehow detached or more relatable gross, like scratching profusely to the point of bleeding or eating raw meat. This is a possession story, but you really ought to see how it unfolds. Explaining all of that would rob you of the experience. It does have sprinkled scares, underlying menace, and quite a spectacular ending. It feels void on purpose at times. The acting is like a blank, scary dream, an ominous feeling that pinches you with anxiety despite never going fully for the jugular. The slightest details become spooky layers. The film is remarkably effective at what it does. It's a scary one. It might be too subtle for your appreciation, though, or you might not be fully conscious of how lingeringly creepy this film is. It was my third movie of the day. I was starting to gauge in and out of this one. So it's hard to tell if it was the moment I was in or the moment the film was in that had me tripping out. You certainly could do a lot worse with a horror movie than Sleep. Number 11. Concrete Utopia is the South Korean submission to the Oscars for Best International Film category. Out of the three from South Korea that I was able to see, though, through my TIFF media accreditation status, it is certainly the best. It looks at a post-apocalyptic society of South Korea where everyone has been rocked by an earthquake. The movie focuses a lot on the governing systems that come in once things have caved in. It plays well to the images and feelings of the modern world. The new rules are like public health measures that came from COVID-19, and all the broken buildings reminded us of wartime images we see today in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. There are also emotionally crystallized moments through the identification we get with the central characters. It's not a movie that will break your brain, but it does interweave nicely between ideas and feelings. The movie never gets catatonically dark. We know the scenario is depressing, and there are downbeat turns in the story, but the movie is a fun one. It falls into the category of escapist entertainment, which happens to be thought. It's somewhere between a Friday night movie and a Sunday morning one. I would put it on a Friday night. Maybe your friends are really squeamish. They will want to, but they probably will respond positively in the ways I did. Number 10. There's certainly some built-in exoticism with The Contestant, a Japanese documentary that looks at a game show, or perhaps more accurately, reality TV character who endured quite extreme treatment as a TV character. He had to live naked in a room in Japan for a year with minimal amount of food. Then, after a day, did it another few months in South Korea. It was like a perverse game show. The 90s seemed to have a lot of content like this in Japan. I like FMW, Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling. In that 90s Japanese Wrestling League, There was an absurd amount of physical destruction inflicted on wrestlers, such as having an exploding barbed wire rope. This documentary looks at how a character is humiliated. Perhaps the producer is not condemned enough in the voice of God narration of the piece, or maybe it is more effective being apparent the way it was edited. The movie is madness, but totally believable given that it's Japanese TV. Their content has always been more extreme to stand out, but the personal torture of someone relives as entertainment for us in this documentary. In the end, it was a year of someone's life, and he became somewhat of a name, certainly locally in Fukushima. And this oddity story features a nice man out here now trying to live an admirable life. Number 9. I pretty much knew what I was getting into when I got in line for Do Not Expect Too Much for the End of the World, having seen director Radu Jude's movie Bad Luck Banging or Looting Porn a year or two ago. That movie was a downbeat comedy from Romania. And with a title that is equally strange and nearly an hour longer, I figured it would be a fun, funky, cinematically unconventional experience coming from Romania. There are a lot of intellectual references and talking smack, so I love the attitude of it. And it doesn't flow as well as a Hollywood movie would, nor should you expect it to. It sticks out, but for me, in a good way. Also, this is integral watching for any Uwe Boll fans in the house. He's got a scene playing himself and playing into his image. Our main character, though, is a female Uber driver who uses a filter to become an Andrew Tate figure online. The commentary on the world being in a bad place is built into the title of the film, so if you aren't for quasi-cynical commentary or want pure escapism, look elsewhere. Romania seems like a hysterical place that is a necessity of the brutality of society. Traffic looks awful. The observation's great. And the people vary in terms of quality of character, but are all quite fascinating no matter what. Number 8. When a movie wins the esteemed Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, a mythological place coveted on the film festival circuit, a film critic such as me knows that this movie ought to be seen. That does not mean, though, that automatically the winner of what might be the Cinephile's Best Picture Oscar equivalent is good or will be your cup of tea. That was what I experienced last year with Triangle of Sadness. Since covering the film industry, I've been paying attention to the winners. Shoplifters, Parasite, and Titan were all legendary for me. But last year's winner was a bit of a stinker, in my opinion. I know plenty of people would fight me on that. So I went in looking forward to Anatomy of a Fall until I saw the trailer, which underwhelmed me. It seems like pure competence with little inspiration or risk, and that was the mentality I took before hitting play on this one. Throughout the movie, I thought that as well. But there is a sharp turn, plenty of later scenes, and an ending that makes it quite a memorable experience. So followers of Ken have no need to skip this one. It's at the same level of inspired filmmaking as Shoplifters, Parasite, or Titan, but that basically doesn't matter. It is quite a cool movie once you get invested in it. If you have subtitles, phobia, you'll be relieved that most of the movie is spoken in English. Number 7. Atom Egoyan is a director I need to spend more time studying because Seven Veils really rocked me in the best way possible. It tells the story of a woman played by Amanda Seyfried, directed an opera which is analogous to her life. It also blends a film opera with cinema, challenging the form of this art of ours, which deserves respect, but isn't always shown with a lot of respect, given the state of the business with low attendance. During TIFF 2019, I did a roundtable interview with Atom Egoyan for his film Guest of Honor. That was fun, but this movie to me is much more virtuosic and impactful. During TIFF 2023, I talked to him on 3 occasions. One of them was filmed on the red carpet, and the second was the next day on the streets. He allowed me to take a selfie with him. But the most meaningful of the exchanges was moments after seeing Seven Veils. I walked out quite emotional because I was moved by seeing such art. Then I saw him there and proceeded to tell him how much I enjoyed the film, which he appreciated. He didn't brush it off. He listened to me. The actors are just as good as the filmmaking here. There's a lot of juxtaposed between the family trauma to the transference of it within the art of opera. Hopefully, Atom continues to deliver us many more movies like this as possible. It's what we need. Number 6. Shinya Tsukamoto has been a director near and dear to me for a long time. Tetsuo Iron Man is cinema of legend. You really need to see it to believe it. What this movie is, it is certainly pure cinematic viscera. Then in 2018, I saw his movie Killing with some Indian filmmakers here in Toronto, which was a remarkable experience for me, no doubt. But Shadow of Fire is much better than Killing, in my opinion. This one is very emotionally resonant and connected with me throughout the whole movie. It might be one of my favorite movies, starting to Kid. The kid is living in an obliterated post-World War II Japan. There is undeniably a degree of humanistic sympathy that we get from the movie's environment, but it does not have a particular policy for the audience to agree on. It tells the story of a boy navigating through this terrain in a metaphorical sense. It's like how a non-Japanese person would navigate how they feel about the oblivion given to Japan at the end of the war. I love the other performances in this movie. The emotional nuances are very real. I like the Corrida-esque sense of family that we get in the early part of the movie and the resolution that we get. I knew that this material would work for me, but thought it might be more of an intellectual experiment like Killing. This one lands on the heart as much as it does the mind, giving it a synthetic energy that is truly moving. Number 5. Harmony Korine has never really blown my mind. I'm not a big fan of Spring Breakers or The Beach Bum. I like them enough, but he never stood out as someone I'm going to follow and build the hype for. Enter Aggro Drips, which is the sort of cinema I like to champion. In an industry dominated by known quantities, here comes a movie that wants to break down the accepted equation of what cinema is. Everything in the film is reflected by infrared lighting. I don't know how they made that, but it creates a dimension of hallucinations, which is quite intense and might be even nauseating for some people. The expressiveness of the strange images reminds me of various surreal art accounts on Twitter, which I constantly retweet and never see in the cinema. It's a shot of hope within an, at time, hopeless medium. It also has a plot like a video game, as well as dialogue that seems more influenced by Rockstar Games than Martin Scorsese. All the characters sound two-dimensionally stupid, which is what makes them great. I will also say, regarding the controversial style of the film, that I will always champion what I believe is zeitgeist or inspired instead of folding to peer pressure. I also don't think it is the best piece of media in the world, but it possesses an attitude which I respect. Number 4, Alexander Payne first came on my radar with his Paul Giamatti starring movie Sideways, so I figured I'd give his latest movie, The Holdovers, a shot at its TIFF. Sounded good enough. Plus, I was going to interview the composer. The movie is a feel-good holiday movie that doesn't feel like an emotional exploitation. It just feels like a genuinely emotional journey of a crusty man in the holiday season and his outfit of other maladjusted misfits. It's Christmas time at a boarding school, and Paul Hunnam, played by Paul Giamatti, is assigned to stay at the school with whoever can't get home during the holiday season. There's a crook, custodian, and 5 boys. Everyone is emotionally distraught about being in this environment during the holidays. Eventually, 4 of the boys leave, making it even worse for the one remaining. But the confines of the school are finally left. Paul Hunnam is a strict guy in a loose era. It's 1970 going on 1971, and he hasn't caught up with the times yet, and probably never will. He's a brutal marker, but spending some time with some people makes a difference. I felt like the journey was earned. I don't seek this sort of movie out, but enjoyed it generally more than I accepted myself to. Last year, I saw The Fabelmans at TIFF as a family Christmas movie, and this one could work as well. Number 3, the film Dream Scenario starring Nicolas Cage is hysterical. Those familiar with the actor's work as of late are familiar with the shtick that goes on from film to film, but the results do vary. I am here to assure you that this one is a win. In my opinion, Nick Cage plays his dorky, balding, sweater vest wearing, dad joke saying professor who just happens to emerge as perhaps the world's most interesting man. He becomes a part of the collective unconsciousness in a funny yet creepy way by appearing in many people's dreams. Initially in a funnily passive way in dire circumstances, he provides people with relief. Then, as his celebrity launches and his own psyche becomes warped by narcissism, the dreams he always unwillingly was a part of start becoming violent to the point of twisted, truly disrupting lives. I am speculating that the film explores the rise of internet celebrities and how various names go out there on the web that might not come up in conversation but live in our minds. The generational shift for where we go for information and entertainment has a mental ramification that we have not wrestled with to the point of acceptance. The film is even shot with light colors, suggesting a dream quality. If we live online and in real life, then we are fragmented. We will question more whether we are thinking something or saying something. When and where things get blurred, that's a heck of a dream scenario. Number 2, the film 100 Yards might make you believe that wuxia can make a comeback. That's what star Jackie Hun believes, and I agree with him. We got the chance to talk together along with co-director Zhu Zhenfen. One thing you will notice about Jackie, if you ever meet him, is he is very passionate, even intense, but the good news is it isn't unsubstantiated bluster. It translates into virtuosic filmmaking. The action scenes are incredible here. It is comparable to Chen Chai's 5 Deadly Venoms and Su Hark's Once Upon a Time in China. If you're paying attention to the genre these days, you will likely agree with me. It tells the story of a wushu school and a bit of rivalry between master and student for supremacy within the school or bust. One of them will have to live as a street vagabond. The stakes go from high to hot here. The captivating acting and directing storyline amplify things. but it is the no nonsense approach to action that you will remember. No strained work, no CGI, no cheating, just no holds barred action from long days on the job. Having watched and liked a lot of new Chinese period action movies, aka wuxia films, one can feel like they know everything the genre is capable of as well as limited by. But then you get a movie like 100 Yards, which really changes the equation. Number one, the idea of the director of Sexy Beast adapting a Martin Amis book to me seemed extremely intriguing. The idea that the result would be bad somehow seemed highly unlikely. The film, The Zone of Interest, is extremely entertaining, which comes from how compelling the story is. It tells a relatively mundane family story with some great shot composition and story flow. The fact that this happy family is living beside a death camp in Auschwitz is stomach churning, and the mundane element is what makes this more effective than a straight Holocaust story because of this undermine. Our protagonist gasses European Jews. This is simply his job. We don't need to see the results of what he does to know that he must have a lot on his mind. His wife is focused on keeping their house in Auschwitz instead of following him when her husband gets reassigned. Those are her priorities. And the realistic expectations of this character's agenda are wild. It has some artful compositions of mise-en-scène, yet it is a movie consisting of people in rooms talking. Its implications, both cinematically and historically, is what makes it one of the best movies of the year.